Hi everyone, today I will show you the story of the movie, Upgrade. The movie begins in a near-future world where technology is massively integrated into the day-to-day life of human beings. Amid this technological marvel, we meet Gray Trace, a skilled mechanic who loves working with his hands. Gray is a traditionalist at heart, preferring old-fashioned methods over the conveniences of modern technology. Unlike Gray, his wife, Asha, is a tech enthusiast who works for Cobalt, a leading AI robotics company. After fixing his client's car, Gray moves outside to chill. Shortly after, Asha arrives home in a self-driving car, and they both head inside. Gray asks Asha to go with him to deliver a repaired car to his client, and she agrees after some hesitation. They then arrive at his client's house, an underground home located near the beach. Inside the house, they meet Aaron, a tech billionaire who runs the #1 AI company called Vessel. Aaron introduces them to STEM, a groundbreaking microchip designed to revolutionize technology by integrating human and artificial intelligence. Aaron calls STEM the future of evolution, but Gray dismisses it as another gadget that will take away jobs from humans. After the meeting, they both head home in Asha's self-driving car. During the ride, Gray continues to express his concern about the growing dependency of humanity on machines. Suddenly, he notices the car is not on the right path and is taking them into his childhood hometown. Although they try to stop the vehicle, it accelerates and crashes after hitting a metal barrier. Before they can process what's happening, 4 armed men force them out. While being filmed by police drones, the leader of the attackers named Fisk kills Asha in cold blood and injects a chemical into Gray's neck which paralyzes him from the neck down. Gray is left helpless on the ground, unable to move as the men walk away. Gray finds himself in a hospital, devastated by the loss of his wife and his inability to move. 3 months later, Gray returns to his home from the hospital. Due to his quadriplegia, he needs a wheelchair to move around and perform simple tasks using the robotic arms installed in his house. His mother Pamela moves in to care for him. She washes his body, cuts his hair, and supports him emotionally. The next morning, Gray and his mother visit Detective Cortez, who is leading the police investigation into the murder of Gray's wife. The detective informs them that the police haven't identified the attackers yet. Gray gets frustrated by the news, and after getting back home, he orders the robotic arm to inject him with brain stimulant medicine. Gray orders the robot to give him multiple shots so that he can commit suicide, but the robot refuses after the 4th shot. Gray loses consciousness, and in the morning, he wakes up in a hospital bed. Soon after, Aaron visits Gray while he is in the hospital. Aaron offers him a chance to regain control of his body through an experimental procedure. Aaron explains that STEM, the AI chip he showcased earlier, can be implanted into his spine which will connect the brain with the rest of his body to restore his mobility. At first, Gray declines Aaron's offer saying he just wants to die, but the thought of avenging Asha ultimately convinces him to accept Aaron's idea. The procedure is then conducted at Aaron's lab. Once STEM is successfully implanted, Gray is surprised to see his hands moving again. He can now walk and do everything by himself. Before returning home, Gray signs an agreement with Aaron to keep the procedure secret, as the technology is unapproved and illegal. Aaron warns Gray that no one must know about STEM and he must continue to act paralyzed in public. Back at his home, Gray looks into the files Detective Cortez sent him. While reviewing police footage of the attack, he hears a voice inside his head. Gray initially thinks he is becoming insane, but after moments, STEM explains that it can communicate with him by sending sound waves directly to his eardrums, which only he can hear. STEM reassures him that it can't read his mind and he must speak out loud to communicate with it. STEM then analyzes the footage and spots details the police missed. It points out that the man who shot his wife wasn't holding a gun but had a gun implanted inside his hand. It also shows him the tattoo on one of the attackers. Using the tattoo, Gray discovers the name and address of the attacker. The next morning, Gray breaks into the attacker's house. When he looks into the man's messages, Gray finds that a local bar named Old Bones is mentioned multiple times. The man suddenly arrives at his house and gets into conflict with Gray. The man takes the upper hand at the beginning of the fight, but things change quickly when Gray allows STEM to take over his body. Gray fights with precise, brutal attacks, killing the man with ease. Gray is shocked by the fact that he murdered the man. He then throws up and moves outside after cleaning his fingerprints. Hours later, the murdered man is then examined by the police forensic group. The doctor tells Detective Cortez that the man has a functioning gun installed into his body with its own loading system. Back at Aaron's home, Aaron informs Gray that he can track his every movement and knows everything he has been doing lately. Aaron warns him that he will remove Stem from his body if he continues to do the investigation. Aaron is concerned that the police will find out about the Stem operation if Gray continues to do the investigation. Meanwhile, Cortez is investigating the man's murder. She finds drone footage showing Gray in his wheelchair near the murder scene. To see if the man in the wheelchair was Gray, she ordered a computer cross-check. But the system disregards Gray as a suspect. That night, Gray visits the local bar that was mentioned in the messages of the man he murdered. Once inside, Gray informs the people in the bar that he is the one who killed the man. A man named Tolan walks up to Gray and takes him to the bathroom along with other men. Tolan starts stabbing Gray to check if he really is a quadriplegic. Gray asks Tolan if he was among the attackers who killed his wife. When Tolan admits he was, Gray allows Stem to take control and knock down Tolan's men. Gray pins Tolan down and interrogates him, but he refuses to give him information about the murder. With the help of Stem, Gray uses the knife to torture Tolan by cutting his face. Tolan finally tells him that the incident was a job, and they were ordered by a man named Fisk, but Tolan dies before he can tell more. From Tolan's injury, Gray sees a computer chip branded Cobit, the company where Asha used to work. Stem informs Gray that Aaron is attempting to shut it down remotely. Stem instructs him to visit a hacker nearby to disable Aaron's remote control on it. Gray moves outside the bar and runs to the hacker's house, leaving his wheelchair behind. Just before reaching the house, Gray begins to lose control of his limbs due to the shutting down process by Aaron. He is left with no choice but to crawl up the stairs of the apartment. Meanwhile, Fisk, the man who shot Gray's wife, is accessing Tolan's memory through his implants. He then heads to Gray's location after listening to Gray's conversation with Stem. Gray finally reaches the hacker's apartment, just as he becomes quadriplegic again. The hacker, Jamie, pulls him inside a room full of VR-playing people. She hacks the chip and tells Gray to wait until the chip reboots by itself. Meanwhile, Fisk and his bodyguard arrive at the apartment. After watching the men through a camera, Jamie packs up and leaves Gray behind. Gray starts to regain control of one arm and attempts to move to hide. Shortly after, Fisk and his guy enter the room and find Gray crawling. Luckily, Stem finishes the reboot system which enables Gray to escape the two men. Fisk's guy chases him and finally, they get into a fight at the rooftop. Gray uses the man implant to kill him, and later, Fisk finds his guy dead. Gray returns home, and while arguing with Stem on their next step, he comes across his mother. Pamela is confused to see her son walking. Gray tells her about Stem and warns her not to tell anybody. Meanwhile, Aaron looks desperate and scared while sitting at his home. He has lost control over Stem after the hacking. He is terrified to see Stem moving in the direction he never anticipated. That night, Gray dreams about Asha sitting next to his bed. Detective Cortez arrives, telling him that they found his wheelchair near a bar with another murder case. Gray claims that he followed someone there but got to a fight with the person. Luckily, he was helped out by strangers, who put him in a cab. Gray admits that he wants to find the men responsible for Asha's death. While Gray telling his story, Cortez slips her hand into Gray's coat to put a recording device, and soon both Cortez and Pamela leave Gray's room. Gray argues Stem saying they need to stop. But Stem abruptly stops its functions, leaving Gray paralyzed. Stem reveals that the earlier hacking procedure gave it full autonomy which enables it to act on its own without the need to follow Gray's permission. Stem insists on finding Fisk before he kills them both. Without Gray's will, Stem moves Gray's body, grabs his gun, and gets outside the house. Meanwhile, Cortez is listening to Gray's conversation. She then follows him when he drives out of the house. While driving, Gray finds the analog recording device in his pocket and throws it out into the road. He realizes that Cortez is following him and begins maneuvering around cars to lose her. Realizing they can't outrun her, Stem hijacks a nearby self-driving car and crashes it into Cortez's vehicle. Cortez uses another car to go back to Gray's home and interrogate his mother. When Fisk gets into his home, he finds Gray pointing a gun at him. When Gray asks him about the night of the accident, Fisk claims that he gave him a gift by making him one of them, the upgraded. He even offers Gray a position within his team. But Gray dismisses his offer and asks him why they killed his wife. Fisk reveals that Asha was not part of their job, instead, he was the job, and the order came from somebody else more powerful than Cobalt. When Fisk explains Asha's death as collateral damage, Gray gets furious and tries to shoot Fisk. They then get into a violent fight. But Stem is surprised by Fisk's ability to predict its movement and stop its punches before impacting him. Fisk finally pins Gray to the wall, pointing his armed hand at him. Stem asks Gray's help, saying it has exhausted all of its tactical options. Gray comes up with an idea and begins mocking Fisk's brother. Gray tells Fisk that he did him a favor by killing his weak brother. Fisk gets angry and tries to punch Gray instead, allowing Gray to get the upper hand and kill him. Stem suggests Gray to listen to Fisk's phone conversation. They hear Aaron's voice warning Fisk about him. Gray arrives at Aaron's house and easily eliminates his security team. He finds Aaron sitting by himself and frightened to see Gray. When Gray asks why he wants to kill his wife and use him as an experiment, Aaron denies, saying he has nothing to do with this, but before explaining further, Detective Cortez arrives with a gun pointing at Gray. When she tries to handcuff Gray, Stem throws her off and tries to strangle her. But Gray begs Stem not to hurt Cortez. Gray tries to stop Stem's control over his body, but he fails and holds Cortez by the neck. Gray begs her to use the taser on him, and she does, temporarily causing Stem to malfunction. Aaron points the gun at Gray, revealing that Stem has a control over his decisions for a long time. Stem chose Gray as its host and deceived him into killing Aaron, the only person capable of creating another Stem. While recovering, Stem admits to Gray that it selected him because he had no artificial implants. Gray mourns, realizing he's been manipulated by the same entity that took his wife. Stem then regains full control of Gray's body again and forces him to kill Aaron. When Stem tries to shoot Cortez, Gray resists, redirecting the gun to his own neck and pulling the trigger. However, Stem isolates Gray's consciousness and traps him in a dreamlike state where he believes he is reunited with Asha. She tells him that he's been unconscious for 2 days after an accident. In disbelief, Gray tearfully stares at his wife. But in reality, Stem has taken complete control of Gray's body and mind. Although Cortez begs Gray not to kill her, Stem fires the gun at her, saying he is not Gray anymore. He then leaves Aaron's house. Thank you for watching till the end. If you liked the video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to watch similar videos.